This is HOA clapback. The HOA made it personal, and I made it documented. This is your final winter compliance notice, and it is happening today. Judith Thompson stood in my driveway at 7 in the morning, pointing at a snowbank I did not put there. Freezing rain turned the slush into glass under my boots. She tapped the portable radio earpiece clipped to her ear and glared like I had committed arson. I am a financial analyst. I track every HOA feed down to the cent. I knew this pile was not mine because I had not touched a shovel in 3 days. The plow service dumps snow at the curb. Everyone in Aspen Grove knows that. But Judith did not care about facts. She cared about enforcement. "You are in violation of Section 12-4, she said. "Curb snow placement. That pile blocks the drainage grate. I am billing you $300 for emergency removal." I looked at the pile. It was 4 feet from the grate. The grate was not even visible under the ice. I said, "I did not put that there." She smiled. "Keep talking, I love adding notes." That was the first time I heard her say it. I would hear it again. She pulled a tablet from her coat and started typing. Her breath clouded in the cold. I could see my neighbor 2 houses down watching from his window. He had a worse pile than mine. No notice. I said, "Why is mine a problem and his is not?" She looked at me like I had asked why water is wet. "I can put you on the agenda and keep you there. Do you want to escalate this?" I did not answer. She typed for another 10 seconds, then walked back to her car. A brightly colored windbreaker, bright orange, peeked out from under her white puffer coat. That windbreaker became my landmark. Anytime I saw that flash of orange, I knew Judith was on patrol. I went inside and pulled up the HOA portal. The fine was already posted. $300, dated today. No hearing, no warning. Just a line item with a due date 2 weeks out. I work nights sometimes, crunching numbers for corporate audits. I know how to read a ledger. This fine had no backup, no photo, no inspection report, just a description that said curb obstruction and my address. I called the management company. The woman on the phone sounded tired. She said Judith was the safety committee chair and had discretion over winter enforcement. I asked what discretion meant. She said it meant Judith could issue fines for visible violations without a vote. I said, "What is visible about a snowbank 4 feet from a grate?" She said, "You can appeal at the next meeting." The next meeting was 3 weeks away. I was refinancing my mortgage. My lender needed a compliance letter from the HOA. If there was an open fine, the letter would not issue. If the letter did not issue, my rate lock expired. If my rate lock expired, I lost thousands. I hung up and started taking pictures. I walked the entire block. 14 houses. 9 of them had curb piles worse than mine. I photographed each one with a timestamp. I made a comparison set. I labeled it. I saved it in 3 places. Then I went to work. I thought maybe this would blow over. Maybe Judith would move on to someone else. I was wrong. That afternoon, my plow guy called. His name was Marco. He sounded nervous. He said Judith had called him. She told him if he plowed my driveway again, she would report him to the city for dumping snow on public property. She would also blacklist him with the HOA vendor list. I said, "Can she do that?" He said, "I do not know, but I cannot risk it. I have 6 other clients in Aspen Grove. I am sorry." He refunded my deposit. I was on my own. That night, it snowed another 4 inches. I shoveled. I put the snow in my yard away from the curb. I took pictures of the clean driveway. I uploaded them to a folder. I time-stamped everything. The next morning, there was a new fine. $200. Visible storage. My snowblower was parked near my garage door. It had been there for 2 years. Suddenly, it was a violation. I pulled up the HOA rules. Section 9-11 said lawn equipment must be stored inside or behind a fence. My garage door was 15 feet away. The blower was on a concrete pad. It was not on the lawn, but the fine was already posted. I moved the blower inside. I took pictures. I logged into the portal to upload proof of correction. The portal was down. Maintenance message. I tried again an hour later. Still down. I tried that night. Still down. The next day I got an email. It said my account was under review for repeated violations. It said a hearing was scheduled for the following week. It said failure to appear would result in automatic judgment. I replied to the email. I said I had corrected both issues and I had proof. I asked how to submit it. No response. I called the management company again. Different person. She said the portal outage was affecting multiple communities. She said I could bring my documents to the hearing. I said I wanted to submit them in advance so the board could review them. She said the board did not accept advance submissions for safety violations. That made no sense. I said, "Why not?" She said, "You will have to ask them at the hearing." I wrote down her name. I saved the call log. I started a timeline document. I listed every interaction, every fine, every email, every phone call. I time-stamped it all. I am a financial analyst. I track everything. 2 days before the hearing, Judith showed up at my house again. It was early evening. The sun was setting. Freezing rain had turned the street into a skating rink. She was wearing the orange windbreaker over her white coat. She had a clipboard. She said, "I need to inspect your property for compliance." I said, "I already fixed the violations." She said, "I need to verify." I let her in. I showed her the garage. The blower was inside. She nodded. She wrote something on the clipboard. Then she walked to my front steps. She looked at them for a long time. She said, "These steps are not salted." I said, "I salted them this morning." She said, "They are slick now. That is a liability." She pulled a salt bucket from her car. It had a cracked lid. She dumped salt on my steps without asking. Then she took a picture. She said, "I am documenting that the HOA had to provide emergency treatment due to your negligence. You will be billed." I said, "I did not ask you to do that." She smiled. "Keep talking, I love adding notes." She left. I took my own pictures. I checked the time. I logged it. That salt trick was new. I did not know what she was building, but I knew it was a setup. The hearing was in the clubhouse. I arrived 15 minutes early. The room was small. 6 chairs in a row behind a folding table. 3 board members. Judith sat at the end. The property manager sat off to the side with a forced smile. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. I sat in the front row. My neighbor, the one who had been watching from his window, sat next to me. His name was Tom. He had a phone in his hand. He said he records everything. The board president called the meeting to order. He read my name and the violation summary. Curb obstruction, visible storage, failure to maintain safe walkways. I raised my hand. I said I had proof I corrected the first 2 violations and that the third was manufactured. Judith cut me off. She said, The hearing is for you to listen, not to argue. I said, I was told I could present my evidence. The president looked uncomfortable. He said, you can speak briefly after we review the findings. Judith stood. She had a printed report. She read it aloud. She said my curb pile blocked drainage. She said my snowblower created a visual blight. She said my unsalted steps posed a risk to mail carriers and delivery drivers. She said the HOA had to intervene to prevent injury. She did not mention the comparison photos. She did not mention that I had salted the steps. She did not mention that she dumped the salt without permission. I stood. I said, I have pictures that show 9 other houses with worse curb piles. I have timestamps proving I salted my steps before Judith arrived. I have proof the blower was stored correctly under the rules. Judith said, do you have those pictures with you? I said, yes. She said, then submit them to the portal. I said, the portal has been down for 4 days. She looked at the property manager. The property manager nodded. Judith said, that is unfortunate. Without proper submission, we cannot consider unofficial evidence. Tom stood up. He said, I recorded this whole thing. You are making up rules as you go. The president said, sir, this is not your hearing. Tom said, it is about to be everyone's hearing if you keep letting her do this. Judith tapped her earpiece. She said, I can put you on the agenda and keep you there. Tom sat down. He kept recording. The board voted 3-0. The fines stood. They added a new fine, $500 for failure to comply with emergency safety measures. They gave me 10 days to pay, or they would file a lien. I walked out. Tom followed me. He said, that was a setup. I said, I know. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I am going to let her keep digging. That night, I went through my timeline again. I noticed something. The curb fine was dated the morning Judith showed up, but the portal timestamp said it was entered at 6:15 in the morning. Judith did not arrive at my house until 7. She could not have inspected the pile before entering the fine. I checked the blower fine, same pattern, entered at 6:30. She showed up at my house at 7:45. She logged the violation before she saw it. I pulled the step salt photo she took. I checked the metadata. The photo was taken at 6:50, but she did not arrive at my house until 6:30, and she inspected the steps at 6:45. The timestamp was off. I looked at the photo again. The angle was wrong. It was not taken from my front walk. It was taken from the street. She took the picture before she salted the steps. She took it to document them as unsafe. Then she salted them. Then she billed me. I saved everything. I made copies. I backed it up to 3 drives. I had my trump card, but I was not going to use it yet. I let her threaten a lien, because that threat would look terrible on the record. 2 days later, I got a letter. Certified mail. It said I had 7 days to pay the outstanding balance, or the HOA would file a lien and begin foreclosure proceedings. It had Judith's signature at the bottom. I took the letter to an attorney. He was a real estate guy. He looked at the timeline. He looked at the fines. He looked at the metadata. He said, this is fraud. She is fabricating violations to inflate fees. You need to file a formal complaint with the board and copy the management company. I said, the board is in on it. He said, then you go to the state. Minnesota has an HOA ombudsman. You file a complaint. You attach your evidence. You demand an audit. If they ignore you, you sue. I filed the complaint that night. I attached the comparison photos. I attached the timeline. I attached the metadata analysis. I attached Tom's recording. I sent it certified mail to the board, the management company, and the ombudsman. I kept copies of everything. The next day, the portal came back online. My documents were gone. The photos I uploaded before the outage were deleted. My account showed no submission history. I logged every attempt. I saved screenshots. I sent an email to the management company with the screenshots attached. I said my documents vanished, and I could prove when I sent them. I demanded they investigate. No response. The deadline was 3 days away. My lender was getting nervous. I called them. I explained the situation. They said they could not issue the compliance letter with open violations. I said the violations were fraudulent. They said that was between me and the HOA. I was running out of time. My rate lock expired in 6 days. If I missed it, I lost $4,000 in closing costs. Tom called me. He said there was a special meeting scheduled for that weekend. Emergency session. Judith called it. The agenda was compliance enforcement policy. He said it was a trap. I said, why? He said, because she is trying to expand her authority before your complaint gets traction. If the board votes to give her more power, your appeal is dead. I said, can they do that? He said technically yes, if they have a quorum. But I checked the bylaws. They need 4 board members to vote. There are only 6 on the board. 2 are out of town. If we can stop one more from attending, there is no quorum. No vote. I said, how do we do that? He said, we make them uncomfortable. We show up with witnesses. We record everything. We make it clear this is not going to be quiet. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe so you do not miss what happens next. The meeting was on Saturday morning. Tom and I arrived early. We brought 3 other neighbors. One of them was a retired paralegal. Another was a civil engineer who had dealt with HOA disputes before. We sat in the front row. Tom had 2 phones recording. Judith walked in. She saw us, and her face tightened. She tapped her earpiece. She whispered something to the president. He looked nervous. The meeting started. The president read the agenda. Proposal to amend enforcement procedures to allow immediate fines for critical safety violations without prior notice or appeal. I raised my hand. I said, that is what you are already doing. You are just trying to make it legal after the fact. Judith stood. She said, this is not your time to speak. I said, I filed a formal complaint with the state. I have proof you fabricated violations. I have metadata showing you logged fines before you inspected my property. I have recordings of you threatening contractors. I have comparison photos showing selective enforcement. The room went quiet. The president looked at Judith. She looked at me. Her face was red. She said, you are out of order. Tom stood. He held up his phone. He said, and you are out of time. We have been recording every meeting. We have testimony from 6 homeowners who say you targeted them with fake violations. We have vendor statements saying you threatened to blacklist them unless they stopped working with certain residents. We have proof the portal outage was manually triggered to delete evidence. Judith slammed her hand on the table. She said, you are lying. The paralegal stood. She said, lying is a crime. Fraud is a crime. Filing a false lien is a crime. If you want to call the police, we can sort it out right now. The president held up his hands. He said, let us take a recess. Judith said no. We are voting. He said, we do not have a quorum. 2 board members are not here. We cannot vote." Judith looked around. She realized he was right. She grabbed her clipboard and walked out. The orange windbreaker flashed as she shoved the door open. The president looked at me. He said, "We will review your complaint." I said, "You already had it for 5 days. You ignored it." He said, "We will respond in writing within 10 business days." The meeting ended. Tom and I walked out. He said, "That was closer than I thought." I said, "She is not done." He said, "Neither are we." Monday morning, I got an email. It was from the management company. It said the board had voted to suspend enforcement actions pending an internal audit. It said all fines issued in the past 30 days were under review. It said I would receive a decision within 2 weeks. I forwarded it to my lender. They issued the compliance letter. My refinance closed on time. But I was not finished. I wanted answers. I wanted consequences. I filed a records request with the HOA. I asked for all enforcement actions from the past year. I asked for all vendor contracts. I asked for all board meeting minutes. I asked for all emails between Judith and the management company. They had 30 days to respond. They sent me a thumb drive. I opened it. It was full of PDFs, hundreds of pages. I spent a week going through them. I found the pattern. Judith had issued 63 fines in 6 months. 42 of them were for winter violations. 37 of those were issued before the inspection. She was logging violations in the portal before she left her house. She was deciding who to fine before she saw the property. I cross-referenced the fines with the vendor contracts. The snow removal vendor was owned by her brother-in-law. The HOA paid him $12,000 in emergency removal fees. Most of those removals were for properties Judith had fined. She was creating the violations. He was billing the HOA. They were splitting the money. I found emails. She told him which properties to target. He sent her invoices. She approved them. The management company processed them without question. I compiled everything into a report. I attached a timeline. I attached a records request that exposed the contradictions and edits. I sent it to the board, the management company, the ombudsman, and the local district attorney. 2 weeks later, the board called another meeting. This one was mandatory for all homeowners. The room was packed. Tom sat next to me. The paralegal was there. The engineer was there. 15 other neighbors showed up. The president stood. He looked exhausted. He said the board had completed its audit. He said they found evidence of improper enforcement practices. He said Judith Thompson had been removed from the safety committee. He said her access to the HOA portal admin tools had been revoked. He said the vendor contract with the snow removal company had been terminated. He said all fines issued under Judith's authority in the past 6 months were voided. He said affected homeowners would receive refunds within 30 days. Judith was not there. She resigned the day before. Tom leaned over. He said, "You did it." I said, "We did it." The president continued. He said the board was implementing new policies. He said all enforcement actions would require photographic evidence submitted within 24 hours of the alleged violation. He said all fines would be reviewed by the full board before posting. He said homeowners would have 14 days to appeal before payment was due. He said the management company was conducting training for all committee chairs. He said any future complaints would be investigated by an independent third party. The room erupted in applause. I did not clap. I was thinking about the lien letter. I was thinking about the $4,000 I almost lost. I was thinking about the contractors Judith threatened. I was thinking about the other homeowners who paid fines they did not owe. After the meeting, the property manager approached me. She was the one with the forced smile. She did not smile now. She said, "I am sorry. I should have pushed back." I said, "Yes, you should have." She said, "The company is reviewing our procedures. This will not happen again." I said, "It should not have happened once." She nodded. She walked away. Tom and I left. Outside, the snow was melting. The streets were clear. The sun was out. It felt like spring even though it was still February. Tom said, "What are you going to do with the refund?" I said, "I am going to frame the lien letter. I am going to hang it in my office. I am going to remember what happens when you let people abuse power." He laughed. He said, "You are a Rukamslo or something." I said, "I just track the numbers. The numbers do not lie." 3 months later, the district attorney filed charges. Judith and her brother-in-law were indicted for fraud and embezzlement. The HOA sued them for restitution. The case settled. They paid back $18,000. Judith was banned from serving on any HOA board in the state. The board held elections. Tom ran for president. He won. The first thing he did was revise the enforcement policy. The second thing he did was hire a new management company. I got my refund, $800. I deposited it. I updated my tracking spreadsheet. I closed the file. One afternoon in April, I was outside washing my car. A woman walked by. She had a clipboard. She was wearing a windbreaker. It was yellow. She was the new safety committee chair. She stopped. She said, "Hi, I am Linda. I am doing a walkthrough to introduce myself. Do you have any concerns about the neighborhood?" I said, "No. Everything is fine." She smiled. She said, "Great. If you ever need anything, just let me know. We are here to help." She walked on. I watched her go. She stopped at the next house. She knocked. She introduced herself. She did not take notes. She did not threaten. She did not tap an earpiece. I went back to washing my car. The sun was warm. The snow was gone. Aspen Grove felt different. It felt like a neighborhood again. I still track every HOA fee. I still save receipts. I still timestamp everything. But I do not do it out of fear anymore. I do it out of habit. Because the numbers do not lie. And because people like Judith only win when no one is paying attention. Tom and I still sit near the front at meetings. We still record everything. But now the meetings are boring. Budget reports, landscaping bids, pool maintenance schedules, normal HOA stuff. Last month, someone proposed a new winter policy. It said homeowners were responsible for clearing their own sidewalks within 24 hours of a snowfall. It said fines would only be issued after a written warning and a 72-hour correction period. It said all enforcement actions required photographic evidence and a board vote. The policy passed unanimously. Judith's name was never mentioned. But everyone in that room knew why the policy existed. I voted yes. So did Tom. So did the paralegal and the engineer and the 15 neighbors who showed up that first mandatory meeting. We built something better. Not perfect, but better. And that is enough. I hope you stay well.